talk about some tips for effective data visualization. Now, I can't really guarantee that these tips are going to solve your data visualization problems because data visualization is as much of an art as it is a science. Sure, we do a lot of cool programming and things to get the visualization, but part of it is a matter of taste and just seeing what works. And so you're going to make a lot of bad plots. It's just a guarantee. I make tons of bad plots. You just don't see them because I hide my shame. But anyway, yeah, let's just dive in before I get even weirder. All right, so how do we design effective visualization? All right, so the basic rule is keep it simple. Make sure every piece of your data has a point. Now, as we can see in this pie chart, this is just going to be in frame. It just is. Sorry, people. So, we can look at these two charts. They use the same data, but one of them is frankly a little better. Now, which one is up to you? But personally, I think a pie chart isn't super helpful, but then again, this bar chart is a percentage, not also much help either. In general, you really want to keep plots simple because the more complicated they are, the more likely it is that the reader or viewer is just not going to see what you intend them to see. So some really basic tips are to use color. You'll notice in those original ones, the pie chart had every color, but color wasn't really meaningful. Versus in that gray bar chart, there was no color. It was colorless. Versus these two variants, we can either use color to draw attention, as we can see in the gray bar chart, or we can use it, at least aesthetically, to have us focus on what we want our reader to focus on. So, yeah, data is supposed to, and data visualization is supposed to tell a story. So we can look here at Duke hires per month, and we can plot it over multiple years. And in this original version, there's a lot of different colors. And sure, it's nice to be able to distinguish between the years, but the colors aren't particularly meaningful. And they detract from the big story here that across all the years of Duke hirings, there's a big spike in July. And this is likely because that's when their university's fiscal year starts. My contract started in July, even though I signed my offer in or accepted my offer here in November. Didn't sign my contract until January. And then my contract didn't start until July. And we can really hone in on that piece, that fiscal year hiring, in the second plot, because all the color draws you in to the one big story, and that is the spike in July. Versus the plot that has tons of different colors, and you get kind of drawn in and distracted trying to parse apart the different spikes. Like, why is that pink one? Why does it end? Why did they pick these choices? it bogs you down. So this minimalist approach tends can serve its purpose of telling the key aspect of the story. Now, obviously, there's a downside to this is that you lose information, including various years have different spikes, as we can see, and we can distinguish them. However, that's not a key part of the message. And so you can include that data as like a supplementary plot, as an extra piece, but every plot you make should have some kind of purpose if you are using it for a presentation. Now, that purpose can be to uncover what is there. It could be exploration, and that is fine. But usually those are the plots that are rough drafts, where you open them up and create them so that you have some sense of what is going on. But they're not the final one. I imagine that this Duke plot, the first Duke plot, so I did not make these individual Duke plots, but I imagine that the production process started with the initial one with all the different years, just so you could plot it to see what's happening. And then you stare at it, and then you realize, oh, there's this giant spike in July. Versus the end result is this plot with a giant spike in July and a commentary highlighting that aspect and drawing an arrow pointing to, or that gray line is pointing to what you're supposed to notice. And that plot probably took numerous iterations to get to this point. Alright, so that is the very, very, very brief intro to effective data visualization. That was more of a ramble than anything. But an effective plot tells a story. And I definitely recommend being able to identify what the mission of the plot is and what your goal is with each plot that you include. And if you don't have one, that is very telling. So I'll see you later. Bye.